I think I'm going to need this every single time. I'm hopeless on that. Anyway, talking about interactive storytelling, I pulled a dirty trick. I slapped together a first draft of an essay on interactive storytelling technologies. And I started off talking about interactive fiction. And then towards the end, I began talking about my own technology, but I never really finished that. And then I decided to check on a few of my facts, and I started doing some research. And you know how research on the internet goes. You know, one thing led to another, to another, to another, to another, and started realizing there were some flaws in my first draft essay. And the more research I did, the more I realized that those flaws were not easily corrected just by rewriting a few sentences. I realized I needed to just rewrite the whole essay. So I set to work doing just that. And I actually just finished last night. And I now have a very nice essay on interactive fiction that I think reflects most of that reflects a broader appreciation of what is involved in that technology. I stick with my conclusion that interactive fiction will never get us to interactive storytelling. It is not a path to that goal because for the same reason that video games will never get us to interactive storytelling, the medium has settled into a fixed definition of what it consists of. I was, for example, Sasha, you urged me to look at Fallen London, which you pointed out is one of the most popular interactive fiction things. So last night I sat down with it and started playing it and experimenting and doing things and poking at it and so forth. And what I discovered is that it's the same old text adventure stuff with with lots of extra filigrees and doodads tacked on, but it is not interactive storytelling in any sense of that word. There are no people in it in the sense of dramatic characters you can interact with in dramatically significant ways. It's just the same old wandering around in a cave looking for things to pick up and collect, and you add to your, here we go. You can add to your, it's actually sort of a combination of, hi there, Enzo. I'm talking
Hello.
about Fallen London.
Okay.
It's kind of like a role-playing game in that you can improve your statistics, but instead of strength, charisma, agility, and so forth, it's got some other things, persuasiveness, I forget the others, but anyway, it's so it's really a combination of two genres, but it's not interactive storytelling. It certainly doesn't meet my standard of people, not things. So
you are exaggerating a little bit.
Well,
there are some characters in it.
Yeah, but do you interact with them in dramatically significant ways? In particular, can your relationship with them change in significant ways?
Yes, it is rudimentary.
Okay.
Compared to your system. Usually they only track a single variable per character. For example, there's a honey-addled detective that I interacted with, and you befriend him, and he turns out you start befriending him thinking, hey, he's this great detective and you'll learn from him, and then he turns out to be, drunk on honey all the time, and so he gives his cases to you to solve. But you have to, build your relationship with him to get to that point. I think that the reason you didn't encounter that is because that's not the majority of the content, especially not the majority of the free content.
Yeah,
So
I
I
only spent
definitely
about
see,
an hour with it.
okay, I definitely see why you got the impression you did, but there are some characters where they use usually a single integer variable to track your relationship with the character, or they may use a variable to track which side you're taking. So there was one storyline with a blind pianist and some other character whose name I can't remember, and it used a single variable to track: are you more favoring this character or more favoring this other character? Which is kind of an odd way of doing it, but so there is a little bit more to it than what you encountered. But I see why you got the impression you did.
So, but let's discuss the general question. Or I put this question out for discussion. Does interactive fiction offer us the possibility? Can you imagine it evolving to the point where we really are getting dramatically significant interactions with characters, and the player's relationship with those characters is altered by the player's actions?
I think so, personally. I probably have a broader conception of interactive fiction because I've played, more recent works than, I think you're thinking of games like Zork, classical interactive fiction, whereas I'm thinking of games like Howling Dogs, or I mentioned you played another game that I recommended to you a while back called American Election, and that's about the 2016 election in the United States, and you're playing as a character who is
an advisor to Trump.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of interaction with characters in terms of some very kind of anxiety ridden moments, but it's more, it's not fantasy, it's more anxiety about being stalked or things like that. And I really enjoyed that. So I'm looking to things like that. Mechanically speaking, I like your approach of having the three basic relationships, which are tracked using bounded numbers, and using a bit of math to calculate the changes made to those relationships based on user interaction. I think that the basic difference between interactive fiction as it exists right now and your strategy is in more mechanical depth there, which can be easily implemented. It's just a matter of people have chosen not to implement it thus far. And also, people need to focus much more on the character interaction at the expense of the kinds of resource gathering that you see in games like Fallen London to an extent. But I do think that interactive fiction is progressing in the direction I want to see it progress in. It's just a very slow very slow process. And part of it is because games like Fallen London are successful. They've made enough money off of that game to build multiple other computer games. And they have probably about 20 or so employees in the company. I'm not sure exactly, but they've been commercially successful as well as successful in getting people to play the game. And so because people see those sorts of games being successful, and I think American Election won some awards as well, so you see different games like that winning awards, people are using those kinds of strategies because they're saying, well, they're successful critically and they're successful commercially. So but things, your kind of strategy I like, but it is harder to implement, and it takes a lot of of work to do the writing of getting interactive, a story world up and running. So I think that's why we're seeing so much slow progress, especially from your perspective and from the perspective of the kind of strategies that you're proposing, because the simpler strategies are successful by the definitions of success that people are generally going for.
Anybody else like to talk about the potential of interactive fiction to evolve into interactive storytelling?
I don't know. I didn't play Fallen London, but I played a bit of Sunless Sea, and it's the same developers.
Yeah.
And their game is pretty fun. It's I don't know if it's I didn't play it for too long. So it's a mix between you have a boat and you shoot other boats, and then you go to an island and there is an adventure or a mystery, and it's text when you interact with people, and it's a small shooting game when you fight with all the ships or monsters. Mm-hmm. And it's when you die, you have to start from the beginning all over, and you have to manage your crew. And it's fun, but I don't know if it's interactive fiction, because it's more like a game that you play over and over again until you get better at it, and you're, I don't know, you like a roguelike.
Right.
And interactive fiction for me, it's more like Detroit Become Human, or games that are heavy on the story side, or like Her Story you mentioned, Sasha. But it's usually it's hard to do like gameplay and story. Like interactive fiction games are more there's bits of gameplay, but it's not really fluid. Like Sunless Sky, Fallen London I didn't try, but Sunless Sea and Sunless Sky, it's like you have the battle, and then you are in a quiet place, not in a quiet place, but in a safe place where you can chat and do some commerce, buy some things, get a better ship. But it's rare to see, because it's hard to design a game where you have this interconnected design between gameplay and story. It's
right. I think this is just my suspicion. I have played a little bit of Sunless Seas as well. My suspicion is that the reason they designed it that way is because writing stories takes a lot of time and money, and is a lot of hard work. And so they're basically trying to slow the player down. They slow the player's progress through the interactions with the characters, because it takes them so much work to create that content, and it's easier for them to make the content where you're shooting different ships and so forth, and they can have the player spend a bunch of time in that, and they enhance the experience by having the fictional part, but they also make it easier from a commercial perspective to include any of the fictional aspects at all, because it's only a tenth of the content. Or I'm probably exaggerating. It's probably,
I don't know,
more than a tenth, but I think
it's resource management, and also like you have to. If it was only the story, it would be a bit boring, because there's no spoken dialogue, there's no emotions. Like you don't see a character, you see only the name of the character and what he's saying to you.
Right.
you don't have it's always option A, B, C, D, you know, select what you say or select what you do, but you don't really do it. So yeah, we're still on the same point. Like we don't have a good enough AI system yet to have these crazy characters that can speak to you and respond to what you say. So we have this branching system of stuff you have to. It's the scenarist, the script writer who decides what you can say, and so you don't really say it. So it's a bit.
Well, I do like. I don't mind that aspect of games where you have, you know, half a dozen or so different choices about things you can say to the character, and you know the script writer writes out the specifics. In fact, that's potentially a benefit to the player because you can role play as someone who's more eloquent than you are in real life. But
it's helping you to role play.
Yeah,
basically, it's giving you lines. Like you don't know what to say. It's like if in real life you would have a conversation with someone and you would have cheat sheets saying, "Oh, you could say this. This would be interesting to say, or you could do this."
Right. I think the main advantage I see in Fallen London, and Chris Conley might have a comment on this, the main advantage I see is that it can cause events to happen based on the circumstances that are currently in place. So it has countless global variables that it keeps track of, including a minority of variables that relate to your relationships with characters. And based on those variables, these games can say, okay, this event will happen out of 20 different possible events or 100 different events that can occur. And I would like our encounter system to have that same capability. So, for example, if you could say this encounter will occur because because Samantha's love for the player character is between 0.5 and 0.9, this specific encounter will occur, whereas under other circumstances, other encounters will occur. I would like to have that kind of capability in our system.
Let's hear some other opinions here. Chris, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is one thing that's interesting about Fallen London and Sunless Seas. The games so far from that developer are using that kind of modular design where every event that happens is selected from a list of available choices based on the global variables. So basically the course that the story follows is kind of indirectly set by the player, and it's based on the things that have happened before and what they've done before. But I can't really go into specifics of how the system was implemented for them because I haven't played any of their games. But I know that they're a big proponent of that design structure.
Yen, could you tell us, are these types of games common in China? What are they like? I mean, what is the situation in China with respect to text adventures and interactive fiction?
I totally have no idea what's the situation of the IS in China. Maybe don't not much of person know that. But some company start with the AI system to do some funny things like GLAP3 with that system by the Facebook or Google, or just to use another way, just the pro AI system to make some funny things in the game, like it's just like the text-based things like that. But I think we should just to put out, just like you said, people, not things. Is that exactly about just about people, not things? I think the story world is combined with people and things. Maybe we should not have to delete things from people in the story world.
Okay.
And we still have no idea about what's exactly the form of the final form of the interactive storytelling. Maybe in a very future, this AI system can solve the problem. They just don't use the global variables to trace the relationship between the characters in the story world. They just use tons of millions of neural network parameters to handle these things. Maybe it's the final form. Who knows?
Okay. Cornell, do you have any observations to add to all this?
Yes, I agree with the things that Sasha said. I think that interactive storytelling can evolve into something at least more closer to what you, Chris, imagine. But I also think that it would require at least few like bigger jumps. Going back to what you said before the meeting about the software and people wanting more features and more features, I think that people want more features that they can like extrapolate from what is. So they want more features that are in line with what currently interactive fiction provides. If someone would make like a big change to the format of the interactive fiction, for example, providing like easier tools to craft characters that remember things that that happened, or give them like a bit more like agency in their responses, then people would start requesting features in that direction. That could lead to like another big addition to the format, and after like few like bigger iterations, this could lead to something closer to what you imagined.
Okay, let me make a point here. In getting from where we are in interactive fiction to where we'd like to be, there are some technological issues that have to be resolved. For example, you can't have interactive storytelling without a personality model. That's simply an absolute requirement. A very desirable factor is the presentation of faces with emotional expressions. You can get away without it, but it would certainly help a lot. That part, the face part, that's really not going to be difficult at all. We can do that. But the personality model, well, again, you know, I've written a lot of stuff about personality models, and the basic implementation really isn't that difficult. The tough problem is the connection between between verbs and the personality model values. How does this verb affect this relationship? Therein lies, I believe, the killer problem. That was certainly the killer problem that I faced. And I will argue that if until that problem is addressed in interactive fiction, they're not going to have interactive storytelling. Would anybody like to challenge that rather stark claim?
I mean, I think it is possible to implement sort of Storytron style of characters with personality traits that influence how they behave, and tracking and changing opinions and moods over time. Like I threw together a quick system that did something like that with Bill Maya a few years ago in Inform. We didn't do anything with it. And that's pretty much my approach to designing interactive characters in interactive fiction. Like when I'm writing in ChoiceScript, for most of the main characters, I have a couple of opinions about the character and a couple of moods that guide their behaviors.
Well, certainly one fundamental component of interactive fiction is the, I'll call it the sentential style of response. That is, the player is given, the choices the player is given are all represented by sentences, by entire actions. You don't assemble an action as you do with Storytron technology. You're given the choice of, you know, I decide to punch him in the face and start a big fight. I decide to run away. I beg for mercy. You're given entire actions, and there is certainly nothing about those that is necessarily, or that cannot be applied to changing the relationships. In fact, that is precisely what I am doing with the encounter editor with Le Morte d'Arthur. So it's possible, but there's another issue. At this point, I need to digress and talk about something that has been really bothering me a lot. And it's a matter of mental style. People get caught up in a particular style of thinking. Incremental creativity versus grand leap creativity. Incremental creativity is what everybody does. Basically, they say, all right, this is what I know. I've got all of this technology. I know an awful lot about interactive fiction and all the different things you can do with it. I got these wonderful development environments. I can do all this stuff. Now, how can I take a step towards interactive storytelling? And here's a visual analogy. The goal is a mountaintop. That mountain called interactive storytelling, and we want to get to the top of that mountain. Most people look down at their feet and say, well, which direction is up? And they take a step in the upward direction. They're not looking at the mountaintop. They have no idea where that is. They're just sort of following their feet. My approach is, one of my physics professors was constantly pounding into us the notion of always ask, what is the essence of the problem? And when I do that, my approach is to look at the mountaintop and say, all right, that's where I'm going. I don't even look down at my feet. I just head in that direction and look around at the various ridges and valleys and so forth. And the result is I stumble over rocks a lot. But it bothers me a lot to see people so tightly bound to the existing mindset. People who talk about interactive fiction, I was very upset with Fallen London because I had heard some good things about it, not just from you, Sasha, but from other people. So I expected to see some real progress, and God damn it, it's the same old crap I've been seeing for 40 years now. After a while, I mean, I've been looking at this stuff for 40 years, and after a while, you get a feeling for the genre. And this is just one more expression of the genre. It has some more bells and whistles, which is good, but they're not breaking out of the genre. They're not pushing it. Similarly, when you talk to video games people, they have a very narrow view of what constitutes a game, which is defined by their experiences in video games. And this approach is one of the major things stopping us from getting interactive storytelling. People, to use the cliche, people refuse to think outside the box. They are all stuck inside their boxes. The way to get out of the box is not to say, I'm going to think wild and crazy thoughts. The way to get out of the box is to ask, where do I want to go? And how can I get there? Not where am I and what steps forward can I make? So anyway, I'm going to end up writing up an essay on this frustration of mine. But anyway, let me finish. My point here is that we are being held back by our own mental constraints. I no longer think, with interactive fiction, if I were young enough that I could plunge into it, I think, yeah, I could develop it into interactive storytelling. Technically, it's possible. But in terms of the community, I don't think it's possible. I think that if I developed such products, members of the IF community would say, that's not valid interactive fiction. That's outside the genre. And they would reject it. Okay, go ahead with that. That ought to fire up some commentary.
I don't think that's quite true either. There's a couple of really prominent IF authors, like some of the most respected in the field, like Emily Short and Aaron Reed, who have produced multiple IF works which use a lot of personality modeling and opinions and moods tracking things so that you can play through and make different choices and get very different responses and different reactions from the characters. Something like Emily Short's Alabaster or Galatea, or Aaron Reed's, I think he did this in Blue Lacuna.
Yes, I looked at Galatea, and I think I looked at Blue Lacuna. And in each case, I was disappointed because I did, certainly with Galatea, because again, most of the effort, let me fall back on my point about the mental challenges that game authors, and there's resource management, puzzle solving, hand-eye coordination, spatial reasoning, and the one we should be using is social reasoning, and we're not. And I saw no social reasoning at work in Galatea, and I don't recall Blue Lacuna that well, but I don't think I saw that either. So I don't know. Do you want to? Can you cite anything in any of these products that really involves that requires social reasoning of any kind?
Yeah, I mean, I know Galatea is tricky because of the interface, because so much of what you can type in is hidden. Like all of the options basically are hidden because it was before she had started making systems that kind of suggest topics to you. But Alabaster is kind of an extension of that, which adds the hints, things that you could say to the other person. And it maybe even has more detailed tracking of character personalities and opinions. And after that, she also went and developed a couple of other systems that are specifically devoted to creating these kinds of really, I guess you would call subjunctive systems that are based on narrative. I don't remember the name of this system that she wrote, but there's a
Versu.
couple. Yeah, Versu was probably the biggest one, and Blood and Laurels was the main product that she produced using Versu, which has like a big cast of characters, and it's set in ancient Rome, and all of these different people interact with each other, or you can intervene and interact with them. And it's very similar to Storytron in its implementation of these kinds of things.
Okay.
Yeah, Alabaster was completely based in social reasoning. I haven't played Galatea yet, but Alabaster is just a conversation between you and one specific character, and that's the game. That's all it is.
And it's a really long game too, even in any individual playthrough, but it can also branch off into way different directions too.
Yeah, I guess it also incorporated facial expression to an extent because it had some graphics. The graphics were a little surreal. You know, it could, like, it basically procedurally generated the expression, so it wasn't just a face. It would like have a whole bunch of eyes on the screen expressing like crazy magic stuff going on or something. It's been a while since I played it, but like in terms of gameplay, you basically just choose what you say to the character and, you know, what questions you ask them and what you ask them to do. And I found it a little it's kind of a frightening game, right? It's not a very relaxing game because the character that you're interacting with is scary and kind of dangerous, and so you're trying to negotiate with them and basically make it out of the situation without being harmed. And I found I came away with the same kind of impression I came away when playing Sabut, actually, you know, the original Sabut from 1986. I was kind of stressed out because, you know, in these kinds of games, it places you in very challenging social situations, and it's hard to really know how to proceed. So I played extremely cautiously, and I got kind of a strange ending that I probably wouldn't have gotten in Alabaster if I'd played if I'd taken more risks and such. But it's the entire game is just having a conversation with this character and kind of negotiating with them and deciding how you're going to like whether you're going to basically whether you're going to assassinate them or not, or whether you're going to attempt to assassinate them. And so I think that that's entirely what that game is based on. I would go back to American Election as another example. And again, that's a very anxiety-inducing game. But again, that's a game where it's pretty much completely character interaction. You have a larger cast of characters, and the mechanical depth is much shallower, I think, in American Election than in Alabaster or Sabut. But I think the story is more linear in American Election. But you go through and you have conversations with different characters, and you know you're placed in dangerous situations that you have to kind of maneuver out of. And so it's in terms of the choices that you're basically making all of those choices using social reasoning. It's just the mechanical depth that I'm looking for isn't there, and that's the thing that Spearshake brings to the table. Is you can actually use mathematical functions to determine the changes made to these social relationships, and that's hard to find in a lot of these games.
Okay. Somebody else?
Yeah, I have just before I speak about My idea. What's the name of the writer? Sarah, I don't know, of interactive fiction. Mention an author. Said Elon Reeds, and there was
someone said Emily Short.
Yeah.
Emily Short.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the a way to solve this issue of characters and lines and dialogues is to replace non-playable characters by actors. So I thought a bit about this idea, and the problem is basically you still need to write a story, and it would be more like a immersive theater play. And the thing is, you need live actors, so they need to be present. So it's like a show, and it's like it would be like a Dungeon and Dragon RPG, but instead of just players like you and me, we have the game is we need a story master. Not a story master.
Dungeon master.
Yeah, dungeon master. The dungeon master would be the rules of the game would be and the dungeon master is normally his responsibility is to keep the rules, keep the points in check, and also play other characters. So this is a lot of tasks. So we could give the responsibility to play a character to actual actors. But this would be complicated and really pricey because you would need actors to do the job. So it's a good thing for the actors, but you would need to create like a company of interactive storytelling theater, something like that. And so just thinking about it and how I would do it, I realized I can't do it now I can't do it alone. I need like a big team. I need at least one theater troupe, a group of theater actors. And then to have artistic people like theater people understand how to make a game, etc. I would need to show them a prototype. But this prototype, I have no idea what it would look like because I would need artists to communicate with developers to create a kind of immersive story. So it has been done in the theater world in England. There is a guy called Felix Barrett, I think, who did immersive theater with his I don't know, his band of actors is called Punch Drunk Theater, and they do like a big building, and you can go anywhere and interact with the actors, and every spectator has a mask, so you're not afraid of being weird or anything like that. You're protected. You're like you have no face. And the actors, you can interact with them, and you can't see all the play at once.
Yes.
And every play is different. So this looks like what would be an interactive storytelling game, but it's produced as a play. And my question is, how do we take this idea and cut it down to what could be done in a game? Or is it like maybe the limit? Maybe is it like you can't do?
Yes, something that inspires us. Well, this is the best. What can we do to approach it? And in fact, I've been thinking about that as you speak. Here is one small way of doing that as a kind of more like a research project. Imagine a Zoom meeting where each of us represents an actor. Before we begin, I would write up a scenario. Okay, we're all people aboard a ship on the Nile, and somebody's been murdered, and I don't know, some sort of dramatically interesting situation. Yeah. And each person is assigned a character, and there is a basic character description. The actors don't get to make up their own characters. They can extend within the basic definition, but they can't violate that definition. Okay, now what makes it interesting or useful, I think, would be that we proceed very slowly. And so, you know, it's your turn, Lorenzo. What are you going to do in response to what Sasha did? And you can take your time and then say, this is what I'm going to do. But then, as soon as you're done saying it, you go into chat and you send a message just to me or the drama master, whomever that is, saying, this is why I'm doing it. I'm this much angry, but I don't want to blah, blah, blah. Therefore, I did this. And, you know, then it's Sasha or it's somebody else's turn, and they can think it over and then say, okay, I'm going to do this. And then they put in the chat. Now, when we're done, we have the actions taken by the characters as well as their justifications. That might provide us with raw material for computerizing it.
Okay.
What do you think? Do you think that would work?
Yeah, it would be like, I don't know. Sounds like, yeah, man. Why not? I don't know.
I think each of the characters would have to be somebody like us who understands computers and could express it in computable terms, or at least something near computable.
Yeah, but it would be like a transcript of what happened. It would be like a transcription of a D&D, because it would be like some kind of role-playing game.
Yeah.
And what we will write would be just historical, that was, you know, step by step, all the inputs.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But like the issue there is that it wouldn't generalize. Like we at every point, each of the character that's reacting would have like a universe of possibilities of things they could do, but they only did one each time. And to create an interesting interactive experience, you need to have multiple options available to the character at each point. But in terms of just representing what happened in the past, it's just a single linear sequence of events.
Okay, now this is unlikely to happen, but what if we did the same scenario a dozen times with a dozen different groups of people? Or perhaps we switch people around.
Would we see like a tendency? I don't know how you say it in English, but like a recurrence.
Yeah. Well, we would
like
see certain types of actions that that occur multiple times.
Have you heard of the computer game Uru Live, Lorenzo?
I've learned about it because you wrote about it on Slack and Saturdays, with game developers acting as actors, like they were doing two jobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They needed actors, but they needed, I mean, you said they spent millions of dollars just making a big MMORPG.
Yeah, the difficulty, there were a lot of difficulties. They tried to do that kind of a storytelling experience where they would have real people act as the characters. One of the problems was scale. You'd have 100 players to one actor, to one professional actor.
Mm-hmm.
And you just can't have meaningful interactions when there are 100 people trying to talk over each other, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're going to try and do that kind of thing for a computer game, you kind of need to have a really small player base, or just an incredibly large number of actors, and that's, that goes against the goal of being commercially successful, unfortunately.
Yeah, it would need to follow the economic model of a theater play and a theater with you have one time where you can see the show and you pay a fee to see a theater play. You pay maybe $10, $20. I don't know the price of going to see the immersive theater experience maybe in London would be maybe 50 quid. Like the price of a full AAA game just to be 2 hours in an immersive theater experience.
Let's not worry about commercialization issues just yet, because first let's send Apollo 11 to the moon, and then later on we can talk about SpaceX coming along.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're in research mode.
Yeah. So it's doable. Just need a team of people who are, I don't know, like-minded, and also a group of artistic people who are ready to work. And they can't work for free. I mean, you can't, if you're an actor, you will not spend 2 years on a research project without being paid. So at some point,
I can,
you
but,
need,
I'm retired.
Yeah, I would, and even I can't take all 2 years and make no money on this project. So at one point, it's, I don't know, we need to contact, I don't know, a university, or it needs to be funded as an art project, as a residency, something like that. And so, I don't know. I think it's not a big problem if we do it small scale. Like Euroleaves, they began to like, their pitch was, we make a big MMORPG, hundreds of thousands of players, and then we think about what we do with them. Like maybe we think about a small, like a D&D could be played with 4 or 5 friends, I guess. So we need to find the...
I think it has potential if we have a small scale, like half a dozen people or so.
Yeah.
I will get to work on writing up a spec sheet, in effect, a description of how we might put this together and how the data might be used. And perhaps that will be the topic of discussion next month. It could be. Maybe I ought to make these more frequent, but let me look at this, see what I can get, and we'll take it.
Have you thought about the next class? Like,
yes, actually, I had already developed a plan. What I intend to do, and I may want to throw that away, or at least look, this new idea of the research run. I need to think about it. It's an exciting idea, but the plan I had until today was that I was going to write a series of essays, each one exploring a major strategy towards interactive storytelling. The first one being the standard interactive fiction, the second one being the linguistic approach that I use with Storytron. The third one would be based on the motif scheme in Motifs from Fairy Tales by the Arne Thompson catalog of folktale motifs. That is actually a basis on which you could build a storytelling system. Another one would be the, the French guy, the 31 Basic Stories. He wrote a book in the 1930s. And it seems like that might be a basis for an interactive storytelling system. And then obviously something to do with coming out of AI, although most of the AI approaches, there are some problems, but certainly it is a topic worthy of discussion. So that was what I was thinking of doing, but I don't know. I've got some thinking to do. So I will keep you posted on my work on Thaddeus and Slack, and and we'll take it from there. One last thing, complete change of subject. How many of you have seen a Starlink satellite set going over in the sky? Yep.
No.
You really ought to see this. I have introduced them. I've grabbed a couple of friends and said, you should see this. Come out to my place. And they come out and they come back saying, wow, that's amazing. Everybody who sees this, I've also emailed some relatives and so forth, and they all come back with the same, they're astounded, and I don't know, has a huge emotional impact on people. Therefore, I am going to show you how you can go about doing it yourself. The problem is you have to, you have to go to a particular website. Whoops, there it is. It is a, you have to register and log in. You have to give them your latitude and longitude with some precision. And then you go to it and there is a, here I will, there's something you, once you're registered with them, there's something you want to click on, this. And it will give you predictions for any Starlink passes that come over. These things, it's like a necklace moving across the sky. It's a string of pearls, and there's 60 of them in one group. It is absolutely astounding. But you've got to follow the instructions precisely. If it says 9:23, you get out there at 9:22 or 9:20, really, to give your eyes time to adjust. But it's really worth it, and you can impress your friends and maybe seduce a girl or whatever. So anyway, highly recommended. Oh, one other thing, you want to, they give you predictions for the latest launch. And in fact, they just had a launch, I think this morning. And you will not be, they will have no predictions for the first 48 hours after a launch, but then for the next 2 weeks, it's worth watching. After about 2 weeks, they've moved up so high, they're not very good. So you've got this narrow window of about 14 days, starting 2 days after the launch. Give it a whirl. See if you, and if you think it stinks or that I gave you a bum steer, then by all means, send me an email cussing me out. So, okay then, well, I will see you guys next week.
Look forward to it.
Okay, not next, well, maybe next week, certainly next month.
Okay.
Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.